first thoughts on the Pakistan squad?
So we've got kind of a mixed bag in terms of talent, I feel. We've got 3 or 4 genuine high quality fast bowlers who on their day can run through opposition, but also perhaps with the exception of Shaheen Afridi, the other 3 are quite raw as well and can easily go 0 for 50 in 4 overs. But they could also go 3 for 20 or 4 for 20 and run through teams. So it's all about performance on the day, and also I think the Australian conditions might well help those express paces that Pakistan seems to have a huge amount of. Then that's massive credit to their sort of development pathway that they've been able to consistently find so many high quality fast bowlers. The problem for me with Pakistan is, and it has been ever since I really started analysing cricket about 5 or 6 years ago, is their batting, and specifically with their batting, their hitting. They don't really have hitters, and you know the amount of teams still who make big mistakes and try and get Pakistan score like 150 against Pakistan or 155, anything on that sort of like a 140 to 160 range is a massive mistake against Pakistan, because their batting is completely set up to chase those type of totals. So against Pakistan, you have to really go for that 120 or 180 mentality, where you either fall in the heap or you get a potentially match-winning score that can put them under massive pressure. Because getting that mediocre score we've seen it time and time again. Azam and Rizwan and whoever else is going to come in and bat after that are going to just go and nurdle the ball around and see that off without much difficulty. I've noticed that Fakhar Zaman has now made his way back into the squad. So actually that enables a slight restructuring of a batting group where you can have a slightly longer top order and with the luxury of having Shadab Khan in the top 6 as well, enables you to pick a spare batter, which in theory could give the top order a bit more license to go harder from an earlier stage. So I went for my 11, and it's quite a left field take actually. I went with Babar Azam, Mohammad Rizwan, Fakhar Zaman at 3, Shan Masood at 4, Shadab Khan at 5, because we talked about his ability against spin being critical, and we could even think about moving him up to 4 if the situation dictated. Haider Ali, Asif Ali, Mohammad Nawaz, and then the 3 paces, Shaheen Afridi, Muslim Shah, and Haris Rauf. Because for me, I don't see the value of players like Iftikhar Ahmed, Iftikhar Shah. So for me, when I'm structuring up a team, I'm doing whatever I can to try and create a positive combination of an 11 players without those type of players.
Fair enough, Dan. But I have a question for you over here. Now, Pakistan have tried Shan Masood at number 3, and I looked up a few numbers. And at this point of time, I think he averages around 24.6, and he has a strike rate of 125 while batting at number 3. Similarly, the numbers for Fakhar Zaman while batting at number 3 and 4 are quite similar. It's average of 20.8 and a strike rate of 122. Do you think there's a case for maybe one of them to open and Babar to come at 3, because that gives them a left-hand, right-hand combination up top? And I think it will also allow someone like Shan Masood, who has a lot of what I call as conventional cricket shots, to take advantage of the field restrictions. Somewhat what he tried to do in the warm-up game against England today. Do you think that is a possibility, or you are against it?
No, I'm fine with that. Shan Masood opening, I think, would probably be the best position for him. But obviously, we've seen the Pakistan generally have had this established opening combination in recent times. I think their biggest mistake was not putting Azam Khan in the squad, to be honest with you. And I think that he is exactly what they needed. And you look at the gap analysis of their batting group, and the left-handed spin hitter,
Yeah, but I think, and this is a point we delved into earlier as well, how Azam Khan and Shadab are probably superior players of spin than most of their other batters. Thinking about the 11 that you've put out, I mean, obviously they were carrying Iftikhar all this while because of his ability to bowl off spin. But do you feel dropping him will potentially rob them of a matchup bowler against left-handed batters?
Yeah, but I mean, if you're picking him as a matchup off spin bowler, I don't think that's a viable usage of a spot. We haven't seen much overproduction from him. We've seen below average run production from him with the bat, and that's not enough for me to want to pick him.
Also, you named their 11. I want to know from you, who out of these four players, who do you think is going to be their most important player? Is it going to be Babar Azam? Is it going to be Rizwan? Is it going to be Shaheen? Or is it going to be Haris Rauf? Because even though many might think that Shaheen's the strike bowler and the lead pacer, but Haris Rauf has far more experience of playing in Australia as compared to Shaheen. So who do you think amongst these four is going to be the key bowler? And Haris Rauf has had some brilliant numbers in recent times. I think he's had an economy of 8 while bowling in the last 4 overs, and in the power play also he's taking wickets at an economy of 7. I don't know the exact numbers, but I think that he can be as impactful as Shaheen Afridi. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, as I said earlier, I think all of their pacers have got the ability to be extremely impactful. I'm going to throw another name at you who I think is critical to the Pakistan success of this tournament now. It's Shadab Khan, because we've spoken at length in the previous show about him batting higher up the order, good player of spin, but his leg spin, I think it's probably fair to say this year, is underwhelmed compared to expectations. So his level of performance as a specialist leg spinner is really, really critical in a country where perhaps spin doesn't go as well as pace does.
And looking at the venues that Pakistan are playing their games at, they play India at Melbourne, and they play South Africa at Sydney, and then they play 2 games at Perth, one of them being against one of the qualifiers that come in, and then they play their last game in Adelaide. Do you think Pakistan, in terms of getting the rosters and the venues, they've been slightly lucky, because India will be facing South Africa at Perth at Optus, which is a venue which will, I in my view, will completely neutralize Indian pacers and maybe make South African pacers a little more impactful than what they might be. So do you think on that front Pakistan have been what do you call it, a little lucky or maybe fortunate, because they're playing South Africa at Sydney and then those 2 games at Perth against slightly weaker oppositions?
It's an interesting one, this debate about venues, because obviously we know that any team's got to go to a venue and perform on a given day. But I look at it slightly differently to some degree, in terms of, we know that in Australia the general dynamic is that the grounds are pretty big. They're long boundaries. You don't really get many short boundaries. And on the whole, that benefits a team who are not necessarily boundary hitters, but they're more rotation orientated. And I think that's definitely something that you can say about this Pakistan team. Now, whether that's enough to succeed against high quality, better hitting teams is another matter. But I think that the Pakistan are set up quite well with that batting dynamic and the pace bowling strength to succeed in Pakistan, to succeed in Australia, I should say. You look at in England, you look at the teams who have big boundaries. Someone like Durham at Chestnut Street, for example, they have huge boundaries, and they pick their squad. All of them are very, very strong at non-boundary run production. Now, they'll even, I think, either by accident or design, and I would assume it's by design, pick overseas players who are very, very strong at running between the wickets as well. And the amount of twos that they'll try and outscore opposition in twos and singles. And I think they're getting it's similar dynamic to this Pakistan team, and I think that they'll go to Australia, and I think that at least conditions in theory should suit them to some extent.
And I think we've already touched upon a lot of topics related to Pakistan. So whoever is listening can even go to the earlier videos that we have done. We've spoken at length about how Babar and Rizwan are actually a good fit for a side like Pakistan, and how they've missed out on potentially adding a spin basher in Azam Khan. But Dan, it's a big game on Sunday. India play Pakistan, and you mentioned a point where, very early on that against a team like Pakistan, 150, 160 is like it's what they want to chase, and it takes me back to the same game in the last World Cup when after India lost those few early wickets, they sort of took the safe route, and it almost seemed like they were targeting 150, 160 rather than going all in. But come MCG on Sunday, and if the worst fear of every Indian comes true and Shaheen Shah does take some early wickets, they should go all out, right? Even after losing a few.
Yeah, I think you have to. But the problem is that approach is the approach which attracts the most criticism if it goes wrong. And if India were all out for 80 against Pakistan, it's not going to be great. I don't think in terms of that and the mood of the supporters, for example. The problem is that like ultimately 80 all out has basically the same win percentage chances against Pakistan of like 130 or 135. It was a very negligible difference in terms of expected win percentage from those two scores. So you're trading off, if you're looking at it from a mathematical perspective, you're trading off very, very little in terms of going aggressively with the upside of hitting a score that's going to put them under pressure.
But at the same time, I think teams have to be cognizant of their net run rates as well, because that, especially given the kind of group that India might end up in with West Indies and Sri Lanka losing their games, it's a very good possibility that West Indies and Sri Lanka might also end up in that group, where that group was anyway group of death, and now it will become even more so. So I think that there will be that factor as well, that you have to be cognizant about, even if you're losing, not maybe lose by a huge margin, so that that net run rate doesn't become like a minus, the huge minus for you.
So net run rate is such an interesting debate, and perhaps we could devote a bit of a mythbuster to it at some point in the future. When a team's losing, I think that's not as important. The net run rate is not as important as a consideration compared to if a team is winning. So if a team is losing, I want them to try and win the match still, ultimately. Do whatever they can to win the match. If they're winning, this is where I think it's a big difference. So say like India are playing like a much lower level team, and they bowl them all out for 120. Well, that's when India go for it, and they try and get like 120 chased down in 10 overs to try and that's when you sort the run rate out, rather than worrying about losing by a smaller margin, if that makes sense. And a good example of this was in the last World Cup when I think it was South Africa played against Bangladesh, and Van der Dussen took forever in this straightforward chase, and ultimately that cost them. And if he'd have accelerated earlier on in his innings, then that could have been a big game changer for South Africa. And so for me, it's all about punishing weaker teams when you're winning, rather than trying to minimise the gap when you're losing.
Yep, I laugh because this is the exact same conversation that we had in a watch along earlier when we were doing for the warm up game. But Dan, who starts favorite for the Sunday clash? I know we don't talk from now till then, so I think this is the right time to ask you this. This A and B. Do you think year later? I think India top 6 is pretty much the same, barring the entry of Dinesh Karthik. Do you think India are slightly better prepared this time around, at least mentally, because they've already been burnt once?
That is a question that is so difficult to answer. I think it's not far off a 50-50 match, in all fairness. Something tells me that I think that Pakistan are going to turn up, and I'm going to lean towards Pakistan.
Yeah, the general consensus that we have here is this is the closest India-Pakistan game that we've had in an ICC tournament for years. So
yes,
it's definitely something to look forward to.
For sure, can't wait for it.